Chapter 140, 7th Years, Brilliant Ideas. Saturday, the 25th of February, 1978. Remus didn't think he'd ever hated fire whiskey more. When he woke up the next morning, his throat was raw, his limbs ached, and his head was throbbing. He'd take a full moon over a hangover any day. At least after a full moon, everyone was sympathetic. Ugh! Someone else groaned from their bed. There were loud footsteps, as whoever it was began to run to the bathroom, slammed the door, and began to throw up noisily. Lovely, Sirius murmured from the pillow next to Remus. All right in there, Pete, James shouted. He was met with an alarming gurgling sound from within the bathroom. Bit of breakfast will sort you out, James advised. Remus heard James's feet hit the floor. He began to whistle a jaunty tune, bloody perfect Potter and his immunity to hangovers. Remus's stomach growled. Breakfast sounded good, despite the stabbing pain behind his eyeballs. Sirius raised his head at the noise and grinned. All right, Moony? He nodded weakly. Thirsty, hungry. Suppose I'm not getting my Saturday lie-in then. Sirius sighed overdramatically. He whipped back the duvet, then the curtains to climb out. Remus sat up slowly. Pyjamas? He grumbled, feeling around under his pillow. Yeah, well, you put up a bit of a fight on that front. Sirius chuckled, stretching and yawning. Said you were too hot. You threw them across the room, so I gave up. Defeatist, Remus replied, clambering out of bed in his boxers to look for his pyjamas. He'd have to go and use the shared bathroom up the hall. It didn't sound like Peter would be coming out any time soon. His eyes stung in the bright morning sunlight, and he bent over, feeling about on the floor for his pyjama shirt and bottoms, like a confused gibbon. Morning, lads, Lily said, from the end of James's bed. Shit! Remus jumped, surprised, and covered his crotch with the nearest Quidditch magazine, then dived back behind his bed curtain. What the bloody hell are you doing here? I slept here, Lily replied, a grin in her voice. I didn't know you two shared a bed. I didn't know you two shared a bed, Sirius replied indignantly. He threw Remus his pyjamas. There you are. Make yourself decent, Moony. Remus was going to kill James. What did he think he was playing at, inviting girls into their bedroom? Surely there was an unwritten rule on that. Was nowhere sacred. He pulled his pyjamas on as quick as he could over his underwear, then hurried out of the room. I didn't see anything, Lily called after him, giggling. Christ. Thank goodness it was a Saturday. They made slow progress to breakfast, but in the end even Peter made it down, though he was still very pale and quiet, and just sat sipping his tea. Remus, meanwhile, loaded his plate up until he couldn't see the china pattern. Weekend breakfasts were the best. Fried eggs, thick sausages, dark fried mushrooms, bacon, golden toast slathered in butter, baked beans, fried tomato, black pudding. He was seriously going to miss Hogwarts food. Why is Remus eating a hangover breakfast? Mary asked, pouring herself some orange juice. And where were all of you yesterday afternoon? Think you've answered your own question, McDonald. Sirius winked. You lot have all the fun, she grumbled. Not fun, Peter replied, his head in his hands. Bad time. You have to eat something, Wormtail, Remus suggested, swallowing his own mouthful. You'll feel better. I think he's frightened he'll lose an arm, Sirius smirked, as Remus reached for another portion of bacon. Yeah, that was the last slice of toast, Moony, James complained. Well, for goodness sake, the plates refill, don't they? Remus rolled his eyes. Always wondered how that happened, Mary mused, watching as the toast rack was magically replenished. Well, it's not that complicated, Sirius said. Basic teleportation spell. The house elves have tables directly beneath us in the kitchens. They load that up, then transform the food to the corresponding plates above. Sort of like a magical dumbwaiter. Remus nodded, now constructing himself a very complex sandwich. Sounds complicated to me, Mary said. I'm useless at teleportation, though. I had to retake my apparition test 3 times. It's easier with inanimate objects, Remus said, helping himself to ketchup. And they're only sending it directly up, so the destination part doesn't take as much effort. I tried using it to clean my room once, Sirius said. I just transported all the messy stuff into the room above mine. Except I couldn't get it back after. And Mother had an impenetrable lock on the attic. And I accidentally transported my bed. Well, so that caused a bit of a row. James and Remus sniggered. Peter raised his head. He said. What? Lily asked. You're not going to be sick again, are you? No, I'm just thinking. Merlin, Sirius teased. Better get him a painkiller draft. Peter diligently ignored him, eyes focused on the plates of food. Could we do it on a bigger scale? He asked. The transportation thing. You mean like getting food from the kitchens to our dorm? Remus asked. I don't think so. I think only the house elves can do it. Would be great, though. No, Peter frowned, shaking his head. More like what Sirius was saying. With beds and trunks and furniture. Yeah, probably, Sirius shrugged. I'm guessing that's how everything ends up on the train at the end of term. Powerful bit of magic, though. It took me half a day to do my bedroom. Mind you, I was 14. Well, we've got a lot of people, though, Peter said, now looking up at James, grinning. We could do it. Peter! James was starting to smile now. Have you just had your best bloody idea in 7 years of pranking? Peter grinned back at him, looking happier than Remus had seen him in ages. Emergency cooperative meeting! James carried on, standing up excitedly. Spread the word! The problem with planning a prank between 30 people rather than 4 was pure logistics. Between Quidditch practices, clubs, newts and owl revisions, and room availability, calling an emergency meeting was nearly impossible. It ended up being pushed back to Sunday, then Monday, then, much to James's exasperation, their usual Wednesday slot. There's still plenty of time, Lily soothed, and we can always start researching it now, so we have the right spells to show the group. I suppose, James muttered, scuffing his feet on the flagstones as they walked back to the common room. I've got some dung bombs lying about, if you fancy blowing off some steam today. Sirius threw an arm around James. Yeah! I can't hear this. Lily covered her ears and ran ahead to catch up with Mary. On the fat lady's corridor, Remus paused. You lot go on. I'll just be a minute. He stopped outside Professor McGonagall's office door. Sirius glanced back and gave him a nod of understanding, before carrying on with James and Peter, loudly arguing over the best place to plant the dung bombs. Remus knocked on the office door timidly. Enter? Came a voice from within. He pushed the door open and poked his head around nervously before going in. Hello, Professor, he said, approaching her desk. McGonagall was marking some essays, piled up neatly in front of her, a red quill flicking smoothly across the parchment as she read. She looked up and smiled at him pleasantly. Lupin, lovely to see you. Please have a seat. He sat carefully, strangely reminded of the very first time he'd been in her office, and how tall and frightening she had seemed. He'd really thought he would hate her. She'd seemed so much like Matron. Now he was able to meet her eye and smile back as though she were a real friend. How can I help? She asked, as the red quill came to rest in the inkwell beside the papers. I wanted to ask a favour, he said carefully. He felt inside his pockets and pulled out the letter from his mother. He put it on the desk and slid it across. Over Christmas, the Potters helped me track down my mum. I wrote to her, and she wrote back. She's in a Muggle hospital in Wales. I'd like to have permission to go and see her. McGonagall only glanced down at the letter briefly, before looking at him again. Of course. We can make arrangements as soon as you would like. Really? He was amazed that it had been that easy. Really, she replied. Mr. Lupin, this is a school, not a prison. Students are permitted to visit family members. Oh, well, great. I thought maybe on the next Oxmead weekend. Certainly. She opened a notebook and jotted something down. Come and see me the morning of, and I'll write your permission slip. Thank you. Would you like somebody to go with you? No. Thanks, but no. Now that he'd done it once, he realised that it was something he needed to do alone. He wasn't looking forward to breaking that to Sirius, but there was no helping it. I'm very pleased for you, Remus, McGonagall said, smiling again. You know that my door is always open if you need someone to talk to, though I know you aren't short of friends. Thanks. He looked down bashfully. How is your revision going, Mr. Lupin? Good, thanks. Remus nodded, glad to be on to an easier subject. Better than good, from what I've heard, she continued, smiling. All of your professors have given excellent reports on your achievements. In most classes, you're performing well above your peers, and I hear that you have not only been working for yourself, but to help others too. Well, the study groups are a collaborative thing, Remus said awkwardly. Nevertheless, Professor McGonagall shook her head. I am proud to have you in my house, Mr. Lupin. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just looked at his hands. Mr. Lupin, his head of house continued, I have a favour to ask you. A favour? Remus looked up surprised. What on earth? Yes. McGonagall looked a bit sheepish and leaned in slightly. As I'm sure you know, the final Quidditch match of the year will be taking place in April, just before exams. Yeah, James has the schedule posted up in our room with an enchanted countdown in seconds and everything. McGonagall smiled fondly. Yes, James has been an absolute asset to the team. He's led Gryffindor on a record-winning streak during his time here. The team he has assembled is first-rate, primed to win their 6th cup in as many years. Which brings me to my problem. You want my help with a Quidditch problem? Indeed. Now, I cannot go into too much detail, but I am sorry to say that Alexander Gordon, our beater, will be returning home for the rest of term. I shall be telling Potter on Monday. Of course, a replacement must be found as soon as possible, which is why I wanted to speak with you first. Professor, I'm awful at Quidditch, Remus said, breaking out in cold sweat. McGonagall stared at him with a frown for a moment, before breaking into a highly out-of-character chuckle. She raised her hand to her mouth apologetically. Oh, goodness, Lupin, I didn't mean to suggest, though I'm quite sure you're very capable on a broom, it wasn't you I had in mind. Oh, Remus exhaled, his shoulders relaxing. Oh, good. How can I help, then? Well, McGonagall turned serious once more. We do have a rather good beater already in Gryffindor, but, as you are aware, he was struck off the team 2 years ago. Sirius? Now, I don't wish to condone his behaviour, nor diminish the enormity of the incident which occurred in your 5th year. No. Remus swallowed, finding his mouth quite dry. He didn't like to think about that, not ever. Like his hip. It was a pain which sometimes surfaced, but that he had to ignore in order to keep going. And I stand by the punishment he received, his teacher continued. But, well, he was only struck off the team. He wasn't placed under a permanent ban. Right. Remus nodded soberly. So, he can play again, if he wants to. Remus, I am not going to allow it unless you agree, McGonagall said, placing a hand on the desk between them. It was you that Sirius put in danger. And if you feel... No, Remus said. Let him back on the team. Are you sure? She peered over her spectacles at him, as if trying to read his expression. Absolutely. Remus forced a smile. Of course. It was 2 years ago. McGonagall watched him a bit longer, then smiled back, visibly relieved. He'd done the right thing then, the thing she'd wanted. Thank you, Mr. Lupin. She nodded, leaning back again. I'll tell Potter first thing tomorrow. Great, Remus nodded, getting up from his seat. Thanks, Professor. See you Monday. Chapter 141, 7th Year, Star. He could have told James and Sirius straight away, if he'd wanted to. He could have played the hero, enjoyed the spotlight, and being the cause of their joy. But he didn't. He told himself it was to preserve Alexander Gordon's privacy, or to respect McGonagall's authority. But the truth was that he just didn't want anything to do with it at all. Obviously he wanted Sirius to be happy. Obviously he didn't want to be an obstacle to Sirius's happiness. And obviously he wanted Gryffindor to beat Slytherin in the final match. For James to have his moment of glory. He didn't want to see Sirius punished forever for a mistake he'd made at 16. He didn't want betrayal to hang over them like that, or to bring it all up again. And yet, there it was. Remus had forgiven Sirius, back in the Potter's bathroom 2 years ago. He had absolved a truly repentant boy, with blood on his hands and sorrowful eyes. It had been before they understood each other, before so many other good memories of good things, which had changed their friendship. But Remus hadn't forgotten how it felt. Sirius could destroy him completely without even meaning to. If anything, Remus was even more vulnerable to that now than he had been at 16. No, Remus told himself. There was a difference between atonement and revenge. Sirius had earned this. On Monday morning, James received a note from McGonagall, asking to see him before Quidditch practice. He hurried off without even finishing his breakfast. Nothing was more important than the final match. Marlene and Yaz began speculating on what it could be. Peter and Sirius, leaning across the table eagerly to join in. Remus just waited, feeling half pleased and half something else. As breakfast was finished, James's muffled voice began emanating from the two-way mirror in Sirius's robe pockets. Padfoot! Quidditch pitch, now! What do you reckon he wants? Sirius scratched his head as they got up from the table. Oh, I think you'll like it, Remus replied cryptically. Go on, he sounds excited. You know what it is, don't you? Sirius eyed him suspiciously. Maybe. Don't you want me to walk you to care of magical creatures? I'll manage. Go, hurry. Remus didn't see James and Sirius again until lunch, and both of them were grinning from ear to ear. James had the Quidditch schedule out and was making extra practice days so that Sirius could get back up to speed. You were right, Sirius beamed, practically bouncing in his seat as Remus arrived. I did like it. Remus just smiled back. It was enough to see him happy. And if love was something you did, then Remus hoped that this was enough. What are you so happy about? Marlene asked, sitting down opposite the boys. Say hello to your new beater, Sirius burst out. James laughed, nodding. Ah! Marlene smiled brightly. Excellent. What happened to Gordon? Gone home, James replied. Not supposed to ask. Oh. Well, anyway, Marlene shook her head. That's fantastic. I've missed having you watch my back. So, How come McGonagall let you? I thought you got kicked off for doing something unspeakable." "Oh yeah," Mary added, stirring grated cheese into her leek and potato soup. "I remember something like that too. What did you do?" Sirius visibly balked at this, his eyes widening. Remus frowned slightly. Was this the first time it had occurred to him? Had Remus been agonizing over the implications of an event Sirius barely even remembered? He decided to rescue him nonetheless. "You can't expect Sirius to remember every stupid stunt he pulls that gets him into trouble," he said cheerfully. The girls accepted this, and lunch continued. But Remus could feel Sirius's eyes on him the whole time. Apparently he had caught up. Well, Remus thought, at least it only takes him a few hours now. This time last year, it would have been months. Throughout the rest of the afternoon lessons, Remus's gut instinct was to be evasive, to make a quick getaway after his final class, and stay in the library as late as he could, then go straight to bed without speaking. But really, he tried to reason with himself, wasn't that just another way to punish Sirius? It certainly didn't demonstrate forgiveness. He hadn't forgotten their recent fight, and how Sirius had called him bloody exhausting. It had actually hurt his feelings quite a lot at the time, and he knew that this was because it was so painfully true. So, he'd try it Sirius's way. "Fancy a walk after dinner?" he asked casually, tapping the box of matches where he kept his cigarettes, and sometimes something more recreational. "Yeah," Sirius smiled, surprised. "Sounds good." Pudding appeared on the table in front of them. James was taking notes on the teleportation mechanism, and kept picking up plates as soon as they emptied, to see if they would refill in mid-air, or land on the table itself. "Potter, if you drop even one treacle tart, I'll have your guts for garters," Lily threatened. It was easy enough for them to get away that evening, and they wandered towards the astronomy tower, because the evenings were nice, now that winter was finally on its way out, and no one would have a go at them for smoking. They interrupted a couple of fifth-years clumsily groping on the parapets, and used their seventh-year privilege to send them on their way. "Honestly, when we were their age, we never," Sirius tutted disapprovingly. "Sure you want to finish that?" Remus raised a wry eyebrow. They settled down. Remus rolled up his robes to use as a cushion, and they sat with their backs to the wall, companionably rolling spliffs. "I'm really happy for you," Remus started, after his first inhale. "About the Quidditch. You deserve it." "Thanks," Sirius nodded, sounding relieved. I asked James, and he said McGonagall asked you if it was okay first." "She did," Remus agreed, keeping his voice steady. "Obviously I said it was fine. Obviously." "I'm really grateful. You didn't have to. I would have understood." "Really?" Remus looked at him finally. "Of course," Sirius said earnestly. "I deserved to be struck off. I deserved to be expelled for what I did, locked up in Azkaban. I got off easy, and I know it." "I never wanted you to suffer," Remus said. "I hated you for it, I won't lie. But I forgave you then, and I can't keep holding a grudge. You've made it up to me, like you said you would." He felt a bit lightheaded saying all of this. It wasn't much, no, but he knew that they both felt the weight of the words. Remus had always tried to understand him harder than anyone. "Still," Sirius replied, placing a hand over Remus's. "If you're still angry about it, that's okay. I still feel guilty about it. It's the worst thing I've ever done." We don't have to talk about it." Remus shifted uncomfortably. He really didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to let you know that I do still feel responsible. I don't blame anyone but myself. Not even Snivelus. Not even her. Who? Remus frowned, lost. He felt Sirius's legs stiffen beside him. He saw his hand tremble for just a moment. My mother, he said quietly. His breathing was shallow, and he spoke so quietly that Remus had to strain his ears to catch it all. Do you remember what happened that Christmas? It was when I got kicked out. Remus nodded. How could he ever forget? It had been one of the worst nights of his life, and he had more than his fair share. Sirius continued, looking down at his knees, curling up smaller against the stone rampart. She'd done stuff before. I mean, you know about that, the cutting and the silencing, and that time she vanished my hair, but I know this sounds weird. I never thought she'd do that. She threatened to disown me all the time. Threatened to do all sorts. But until they started getting in deep with Voldemort, I never really believed her. He paused, apparently to take a few deep breaths, then pressed on bravely. It was always the most important thing when I was growing up. Family. Family loyalty. I know they froze out Andromeda, but Mother knew we were still in touch and she didn't try to stop it, so I thought they must be planning to forgive her one day, bring her back into the fold, because she was family. And it was arrogant of me, but I never really thought it would happen to me. He looked at Remus bashfully, as if he'd said something idiotic and expected to be teased. Remus said nothing, only gripped his hand. Sirius sighed. But then it did happen, and they'd punished me so many times before. I thought I knew what to expect, but not like that. I've never been so scared. His eyes were shimmering now, and he was staring angrily ahead. I hated it, feeling that way, and all I could think, lying in the bed at the Potters, was how you or James would have done better, been braver, or figured a way to fight back. I didn't fight back because they were my family. Sirius. Remus tried to sound gentle, but Sirius shook his head, wiping his eyes quickly. No, it's okay. I'm not telling you to feel sorry for me. I'm not making excuses. There's no excuse. I'm just, I don't know, trying to explain. Anyway, that happened at Christmas, and then I was living with the Potters after that, so, well, it was all okay for me, wasn't it? Like, I was safe, and I had nothing to be scared of. But I still felt like she could get me. I had these nightmares, remembering the curse. Sorry, I know it sounds stupid. It doesn't sound stupid at all. Still, I felt like I had to do something, and maybe I didn't always have the best ideas. You know what I was like, all over the place, acting like a twat. Me and James, we used to egg each other on, didn't we? And Snape, he was so easy to pick on because he's so foul and so nasty already. Godric, so nasty. He tried to attack Mary. And then, him and Reg tried to hurt you too, remember? And he just kept going, no matter what we did, and I just... Not like Snape is like my mother or anything. I think there are at least 6 degrees of evil between them, but he made me feel the way she made me feel. I couldn't control it. I just wanted to make him scared, make him feel it too, so that maybe he'd stop. It's no excuse. I'm so sorry, Moony. Remus had not let go of Sirius's hand. Something strange was happening inside of him, something which he had rarely felt outside of a full moon. A fierce and overwhelming desire to protect this boy sitting next to him, to make sure he was never frightened again. He pulled Sirius to him, taking his spliff and pressing their lips together. It's forgiven, he said. I mean it. Sirius didn't speak, just looked up at him, grateful and happy, and Sirius thought that if he could bottle that look, then he'd never struggle with a Patronus again. "And you can blame your mother for it if you like," Remus said, pulling away. "She sounds like a right cunt." Sirius snorted with laughter and buried his face in Remus's shoulder. "You oik," he chuckled gleefully. "I really bloody love—" "Who's up here?" Mary came tiptoeing around the corner. "Oh," she sighed upon seeing them. "I was hoping you were Marlene and Yaz. Been trying to catch them for ages. Finally put an end to their sneaking around malarkey." Sirius leaned back against the wall, wiping his eyes quickly. "All right, MacDonald," he grinned, squinting up at her. "Ooh, is that what I think it is?" Mary glimpsed at the spliff in Remus's hand. "Sharesies?" Friday the 10th of March, 1978, just before midnight. "Moony, where have you gone? They're going to do your cake before James gets really drunk," Sirius called up the stairs. Remus smirked to himself tipsily. James was too far gone already if you asked him. He'd been leaping over the common room furniture to Jeanie for half an hour already. "Yeah, I'll just be a sec," Remus called back. He was looking for something to use as a vase, and finally settled on transfiguring an old Wellington boot, which must have been one of Peter's from first year. "Aguamenti," he murmured. His one work was a bit sloppy from the cider. He had thought cider would be a smarter choice than whiskey, but if anything, it seemed to have made him stupider than normal. He dunked the bunch of tulips into the very rubbery-looking vase and grinned to himself. "What are you doing up here?" Sirius came in now. He was drunk too. He had acquired a wide-brimmed mauve hat from somewhere and was wearing it at a jaunty angle. "Flowers?" He looked confused. Yeah, from one of the Hufflepuffs in my study group." "Who's giving you flowers?" "Miranda Odell, 4th year." "But why?" "I asked her to." Remus smirked, enjoying the game. Sirius threw his hands up. "Moony, I'm too drunk for your puzzles." "They're for Hope." Remus poked his tongue out. "Seeing her tomorrow, remember?" "Oh, yeah." Sirius smiled again, eyes practically violet under the shade of his ridiculously flattering purple hat. "Looking forward to it?" "Do you know what? I sort of am. At least I don't want to throw up, like last time." "Progress!" Sirius flung his arms out. The volume of the music downstairs increased by a few good decibels as that thrill guitar started all over again, and James's voice could be heard singing along.
Small Jeanie snuck off to the city, strung out on lasers and slashback blazers, and ate all your razors while pulling the waiters, talking about Monroe and walking on snow.
James really likes this song. Remus grinned, hand in his pockets, enjoying being away from it for a little bit. "After years of trying, Bowie finally got through to him," Sirius returned, taking a few coy steps towards Remus, leaning against the bedpost in that devastatingly casual way. "Are you enjoying your party?" He tilted his head down as he asked, eyes big and flirtatious as a girl's. "Very much." Remus bobbed his head, returning the smile. "Someone invited Lockhart, the prick." "Oh yeah?" "Yeah. How come he's like that anyway?" Remus just shrugged, eyes fixed on the way Sirius swung his hips unconsciously back and forth in time with the bass, reverberating from the floorboards. When they left school, Remus would buy him 100 pair of black jeans, and that would be all he'd allow him to wear. "Want your present?" Sirius asked suddenly, catching Remus's eye. "You already got me a present," Remus protested. A full year's supply of chocolate frogs, though Remus was pretty sure he could polish it off by the time exams were over. "I'm allowed to get you more than one thing," Sirius said petulantly. He stood away from the bed, legs apart, and waved his hands flamboyantly through the air like a Muggle magician. Then, with a dramatic bow, he swept the hat from his head in one fluid motion, delved his hand inside, and withdrew a small metal thing. He handed it to Remus, who could smell that it was solid gold. It was a rectangular case, just bigger than his palm. It had the same leafy vine design as his gold pocket watch, and it felt good and weighty in his hand. He snapped it open to find a row of 18 neatly rolled cigarettes nestled inside. The lid had also been designed, delicately etched so that the finely hued lines gleamed when they caught the light. It was a glimmering night sky, with a large celestial moon in one corner, and Canis Major picked out in mother-of-pearl inlay. "Sirius," Remus said quietly, staring at it. "So you can get rid of that manky old matchbox." "Thank you, it's beautiful." "Oi, you two, hurry up, or Wormtail's going to start on the cake!" James screamed up the stairs, ignoring Lily's attempt to shush him. Remus and Sirius grinned at each other, and headed down, holding hands right until the bottom step. The common room was in an incredible state, barely recognisable. Multicoloured fairy lights hung from every rafter, balloons drifted up and down like weird bloated jellyfish. The suits of armours occasionally belched flame-free fireworks, and there were people on every stretch of carpet and bottles on every surface. Most of the revellers were now leaping around the room with all the grace and dignity of kids on pogo sticks, led by James, Peter, Lily and Mary, who were jumping the most vigorously. James stopped when he saw Remus, and raised his arms, cheering, "Moony!" "Cake!" Peter began to chant. "Cake! Cake! Cake!" Everybody joined in, and the crowd parted for Christopher and Marlene, who carried between them an enormous rectangular cake, the size of an overstuffed pillowcase. As they brought it to Remus, he saw with a flush of delight that it was decorated with chocolate buttercream icing to look like a gigantic leather-bound book. "Two of my favourite things," he laughed, ignoring the elbow in the ribs from Sirius. He blew out the candles and cut the cake, making the same wish both times. After that, James started leading everyone in a series of toasts, each more convoluted and elaborate than the last, encouraged by Sirius and Peter. That meant at least 2 more pints of cider, and some of Mary's witch's brew when he ran out. Remus's last memory of his 18th birthday party was some lunatic deciding to put on Goat's Head Soup, which had to be his least favourite Rolling Stones album. But he was pissed and he didn't care. The jumping and flailing continued, and the hot room was loud and sweaty, and everyone was red-faced and grinning. And Remus didn't even care when Lily and James pointed and laughed at him as the final track began to play, and everyone belted out at the top of their lungs. End of chapter 141.